of 106.7 The Fan WJFK and 99.1 WNEW in Washington and Baltimore to join us for our NFL draft coverage of this year's upcoming draft, which starts Thursday night.
AKA my second Christmas.
Yeah. So,
he's been counting down the days, hours, minutes, seconds.
Oh, and then after the weekend is up, I'm going to be counting down the hours, days, minutes, and seconds to the next draft.
Wait, but don't you? What about the start of NFL training camp?
I mean, that's some.
And
I don't
then,
know why. I just like the draft so much. It's like my second Christmas, but I'm looking forward to the regular season. But I don't know. There's something about the draft. I don't know.
The draft is a blast, man. I love the draft.
all right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for coming on.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
of
Jeff,
course.
it's good to talk to you again.
All right. So I'll start off with a question. First off, what do you think of this year's draft? Do you think it's good, mediocre, bad?
I think there are some positions that are really strong, like wide receiver, just like last year. I think you're going to see a trend where, first of all, running backs a few years ago were like, the easiest position to transition from college to the NFL, and now you're going to see receivers. Just look at last year's class. It was ridiculous.
Loaded.
Sixth rounders producing for their team. And obviously Odell Beckham Jr. just tore up the league. He didn't look like a rookie. So there are a lot of really good receivers in this draft. The pass rushing draft, defensive ends and linebackers, is probably the best in a pretty long time. From guys like Bud Dupree, Randy Gregory, who's going to fall, but he's arguably the best pass rusher, Vic Beasley. A lot of people kind of compare him to Von Miller. So those are two very, very strong positions. But I think last year's is better, probably based on the receiver talent alone. But I think the running back position is also pretty good. Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, obviously the top two. But a guy like Coleman from Indiana could be an early second-round pick. He's a good player as well. So I think they're comparable, but based on the receiver class last year, it was just ridiculous.
I can't remember an Indiana player getting drafted since Antoine Randall, so it's funny. That's a long time ago.
Coleman will break that streak.
I'm sure there have been players drafted. I just don't remember any off the top of my head. Jeff, obviously you just talked about the depth and defense and running back, but definitely the top, well, I wouldn't say the top two players in the draft, but the most talked about players are the two Heisman winners in the draft, the two Heisman winning quarterbacks, Jameis Winston, who many people, including yourself in the mock draft, which I will be sharing on our page after this recording, you have him going number one to the Bucs overall, and you had Marcus Mariota. I think you had him going to the Jets. Am I right?
Yes, Jets at number 6.
All right. Between your general feel of those two players, which one do you think will have a better overall pro career?
Well, I'll put it this way. If Jameis Winston didn't have the off-field concerns that he does, I think there wouldn't be a discussion as to who's the best quarterback in the draft. There's questions about both of them, and they're kind of polar opposites. Winston is the boisterous, charismatic guy who has some off-field issues, where Marcus Mariota is the really calm, cool, collect guy who there are questions about his. Sorry?
He's humble too.
Yeah, but there are some questions. He played in a spread system. He hasn't been in a huddle since high school. So there are some questions about him being able to transition into the NFL. RG3 is a perfect example of a guy who just didn't work out. But I think that's more of a rare example where he kind of took it to more. I think his growth has been stunted by his want to brand himself That's a big kind of topic of discussion in D.C., how RG3 seems to be concerned more about his brand than playing quarterback. I think Marcus Mariota is a different guy. I think they can both be very good quarterbacks. I think Winston will end up having the better career just because he's more pro-ready, and he has. I think if he's probably going to win a Super Bowl first before Mariota.
If either of them win the Super Bowl, I guess.
Yeah, if either of them.
Right.
He just seems to have this swagger about him that I really like. He's a good leader. Did make a lot of mistakes his senior year. This past year, had a lot of interceptions. But I think Winston is definitely the better quarterback. But Mariota may be the better guy.
You mentioned RG3, and we'll get back to Mariota in a second. But do you think the jury is still out on RG3, or do you think he's already a bust?
Well, I don't know. You see, Kirk Cousins, they drafted Kirk Cousins in that same draft, and a lot of people thought, oh, wow, that's crazy to draft two quarterbacks so close together. But the RG3 just doesn't get rid of the ball. He holds it too often, which, leads to some big hits and gets injured. I forget the exact stat, but it was something like RG3, was sacked like 3 times the rate that Kirk Cousins was, and they were playing behind the same offensive line. And, so that shows that Kirk, if he gets it out quickly, maybe the offensive line isn't as bad as we think, and it's just Griffin holding on to it. I think I'd give him one more year. If he still isn't developing, then it might be time to move on. You could match the Redskins' offensive weapons up with anybody in the league. Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, Alfred Morris is one of the best running backs in the league. If Jordan Reed can stay healthy, he has all-pro potential at tight end, and they have one of the best left tackles in the league. So they're pretty much a quarterback away from being a top 5 offense. Defense still has some questions, but I give Griffin one more year.
Going back to,
I think the Redskins gave him that last year too, picking up that option, right? It sounds like they. Sorry to cut you off there, Ethan, but sounds like the Redskins, they want Griffin to be the guy, but
they can always cut him. They can always just cut bait with him.
True, that is true.
Scott McCloughan is one of the best talent evaluators in the NFL. He was brought in this offseason as their new GM. So that's created a lot of buzz in D.C. A lot of people are really excited. But there are some beliefs and opinions that, Griffin isn't McCloughan's guy. So they could draft a quarterback in the later rounds to compete with Griffin, and you already have Kirk Cousins there. So
yeah,
there's going to be some competition.
And going back to Mariota, one of the questions that I've had, and there's been a lot of discussion about this recently, is that the San Diego Chargers seem very eager to trade Phillip Rivers to Tennessee so they can move up to number 2 and select Marcus Mariota. Why would the Chargers want to do that? Because to me, that's a huge risk and a huge gamble, and quarterbacks are so hard to come by. Why would you trade away a proven guy for an unproven rookie?
I'm not really sure. Maybe they haven't really won anything with Phillip Rivers. They've always had great teams. I don't really know. Phillip Rivers is in his 30s, though, so maybe they're figuring, hey, we can, get a young quarterback to build around. And they do have a talented roster, but, quarterbacks are so hard to come by. I'd stick with Rivers, but if, they come to Tennessee with a great trade offer, I think if you're Tennessee, you got to take it because they have a lot of needs, and they're not one quarterback away from competing. Especially a rookie quarterback. I think they can compete with Phillip Rivers just because it's Phillip Rivers. But
then again, if I'm San Diego and I am trying to look for the future, I would want to trade, or I would want to pick a quarterback, maybe in the second round or third round, and have that quarterback sit behind Philip Rivers for a couple of years to groom him, and that way you still stay competitive with a proven quarterback while grooming the next guy, sort of like what the Patriots are doing with the Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah,
or even better, like Aaron Rodgers was
Right,
behind
exactly.
Brett Favre. Yeah.
Yeah.
there are a lot of rookie quarterbacks that have come in. I mean, Joe Flacco and Matt Ryan kind of started that trend, just coming in and playing pretty darn well in your first your rookie season.
Yeah.
But then again, with those guys, those teams at the time, they didn't have a proven quarterback.
That is very true. I like that philosophy, letting someone sit. I think Tennessee and San Diego could go multiple directions. I mean, that's a big domino. If Tennessee trades down with San Diego, I mean, that changes the whole dynamic of the draft.
Jeff, I don't know if Tennessee's going to trade that pick to the Chargers, but I've heard a lot of people say that they don't think Tennessee's going to keep that pick. Is there anybody else? I know a lot of people are really high on the Eagles possibly getting Marcus Mariota to just add to their plethora of quarterbacks. Could you
and Oregon players?
Yeah, they're basically adding up to try and get Marcus Mariota, and we all know Chip Kelly loves his Oregon guys. Do you think that's a possibility? Like, could you possibly see Marcus Mariota in Philly? I've heard people say, no way it happens, especially after this crazy offseason. But at the same time, I've heard people say they're doing this to get Mariota. What are your thoughts?
You never know. I think they have the ammunition. I think this was on NFL.com. There was like this bold predictions, segment they did, and someone said, "What if they traded away Bradford and his name is escaping me right now. One of their and McCoy.
Oh, okay.
For a top 10 pick and got Marcus Mariota. I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be some big trade in the top 5 that's going to just throw the whole entire draft through a loop. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but I do think there's going to be some type of big trade. And Chip Kelly, he has complete power over the personnel on that team. So if he wants Marcus Mariota, I think they're going to find a way to get him.
Another player that I've been interested in, I've heard people say he could go really anywhere in this draft. I've heard people say he could go in the, a lot has changed in the last last 48 hours or so. But Shane Ray, I've heard people say he could go top 5, and then I've heard people say he could go late round, and I think it was Monday he was cited for marijuana possession to go along with failed drug tests and anything. What are your thoughts on Shane Ray overall as a player? Where do you see him possibly ending up? I can't remember where you had him in his mock draft, but obviously that was before all this came out. What are your thoughts on him as a player?
Well, first of all, I have him going 21 to Cincinnati.
Okay.
Cincinnati seems to have this, way of picking up really elite talent when they fall down.
Yes.
But it's interesting because him and Randy Gregory are arguably the 2 best pass rushers in the draft, and they've had some issues in the offseason that caused them to slip. I have Gregory going to Houston at 16 just because pair him up with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney and just have fun. But I think Shane Ray I think he's probably in the late 20s now. I could see Baltimore picking him up. People with the name Ray seem to do pretty well in Baltimore. I could see him going to Dallas. Dallas had, their linebacking core hasn't been, anything to rave about. Indianapolis, I could see him being a good fit there. Someone's going to take a chance on him based on talent alone. I could see Green Bay, maybe. Taking a chance on him. There's going to be some team that sees, his talent level. He could be a top 10 pick, but I just think with that, he's going to fall.
It's really a shame to see that happen to professional athletes like this, to have your whole life ahead of you, basically, and then have an incident like this. possibly affect where you go in the draft. It's really a shame to see happen, in my opinion.
And
we've seen it happen a couple times now.
The poster boy for that in this draft would have to be Dorial Green-Beckham. He played at Missouri, was the top recruit in the country as a wide receiver, got kicked off the team, had some domestic violence issues, then went to Oklahoma last year, didn't play, was just practicing. But if he didn't have those issues, he could be a top 5 pick. He arguably has the most talent of any receiver in the draft. Think of him like an Alshon Jeffrey type of guy. I mean, just throw it up to him and he'll go get it. But he's pretty much the poster boy for that in this draft.
I know we've talked about the quarterback comparison, but another position offensively that's getting a lot of hype, especially in the first top 10 picks or so, wide receiver, it's Kevin White, right? And Amari Cooper. I can't remember if it's Kevin White or something else.
Kevin White.
Kevin White and Amari Cooper. Which one of them? I know we've already done the Winston and Mariota comparison, but which one of them would you take? You're an NFL GM. Which one of them would you take? They're both studs.
I'd probably go with Cooper. I haven't gone forward to Oakland, but I've heard Jacksonville really likes him, so they might throw everyone off and pick Cooper. But the thing with Kevin White is he basically was a one-year wonder at West Virginia. It was a great year, but I mean, Amari Cooper's done it in the best conference for 3 straight years, where he's just dominated the competition pretty much. So if you're Oakland at 4, you have a franchise quarterback in Derek Carr. Your biggest position of need, arguably, is wide receiver. Like, you need to hit on a wide receiver. And why not pick the most polished receiver in the draft? He can do a little bit of everything. His great hands, fantastic after the catch, and he's just done it in the best conference against the best competition. So I'd go with Cooper. I think Kevin White's a great player, and he's going to be a good player in the league for many years. But, I mean, I think you go with a proven guy. But that's just me.
I think I'd agree with you overall on that. I've always been a big fan of Cooper in general. I mean, he's got just – and the Raiders, they love that speed. That's why they picked Darius Hayward-Bay over Michael Crabtree and are still regretting it almost 10 years later. But, they love that speed.
So, Jeff, I saw someone, I think it was CBS Sports, they said that there's only 5 can't-miss players in this year's NFL draft. Who do you think those 5 players are? Or do you think there's more can't-miss players?
That's tough. If I were to pick the can't-miss players, I would definitely say Dante Fowler from Florida. I think he's one.
He's really good.
Vic Beasley from Clemson, he opened a lot of eyes in the combine. Definitely Amari Cooper. I think Todd Gurley. If not for that knee injury, he would definitely be a top 10 pick. If he didn't have that knee injury, I think New York Giants at number 9 would be a good fit. Man, can't miss players. That's a tough
Struggling
one.
to come up with 5 here.
I already said Dante Fowler, Vic Beasley. Let's go Jameis Winston. I think he's the most pro-ready quarterback probably since Andrew Luck. I think Bud Dupree opened a lot of eyes with his athleticism. I think Danny Shelton's going to be a fantastic player, the nose tackle from Washington. I think Marcus Mariota could be with the proper coaching. But it's a pretty top-heavy draft, I'd say.
I also saw that the Browns could be trading up to number 5, possibly in that Mariota range. Could you see that happening?
I mean, they need a quarterback. I don't think Johnny Football is the answer. He seems to be too concerned with a lifestyle rather than playing quarterback. I could definitely see that happening. They seem to be desperate for a quarterback. And Cleveland actually has a really talented roster, especially on defense.
Oh, yeah.
They lost Buster
There's some
Screen.
pretty good receivers, too.
And they lost Buster Screen in the offseason to the Jets, Ryan. But, I mean, they're a few players away from being competitive. I personally think they have a lot of talent. Their organization is just a mess. But they do have a lot of talent. I could definitely see that happening, especially since they have 2 first-round picks. They have the ammunition, so why not?
So let's get into. We've already discussed who you think the Jets will take and Marcus Mariota. Let's talk about both the Ravens, the Redskins, and the Patriots. Who you think they will take or what they will do in the first round on Thursday?
Well, let's start with the Redskins. I think they're the biggest domino in the draft. Because let's say Marcus Mariota falls all the way to 5. There was a report from John Clayton saying that if he makes it to 5, the Redskins are taking him. I personally think that's a little bit of a smokescreen.
Really?
I do. Because...
really, the Redskins are going to take him. I find that hard to believe.
I mean, if Scott McLuhan doesn't think RG3 is the answer, I could see him pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
But that becomes a really attractive option. For teams in need of a quarterback, or there's always a team that seems to fall in love with a player, pass rushers, receivers. So if Kevin White or Amari Cooper somehow fall to 5, maybe Vic Beasley. If Vic Beasley is there, I think the Redskins are going to take him. But I think there's some player that some team is going to fall in love with, that there's going to be there at 5, and I could trade with the Redskins. I mean, the Skins have so many needs that I think a trade would be the wisest option for them. But if Vic Beasley is there, I think they'll go with Beasley. Ravens, I don't know. I honestly have no idea. Safety is a need. And if Landon Collins from Alabama is there, the strong safety, Ozzie Newsome most likely is not going to pass on a great player from his alma mater out of the league. I have them taking Jalen Strong, the receiver from Arizona State. Torrey Smith is gone. I think he's an overrated loss. He was a one-trick pony. I think they can replace that pretty easily. I think Jalen Strong would be a great pick. Melvin Gordon is also a strong possibility there. One of Gordon's running back coaches at Wisconsin actually is the running back coach with the Ravens right now. So they know him. But I could also see them trading up for a guy like Randy Gregory. I read an article on the Ravens website that said they almost they tried to trade up for Khalil Mack last year. So pass rusher is a very underrated need for them. I could see them trying to trade up. Terrell Suggs and Elvis Dumervil, they're 2 of the best guys in the league, but they're getting up there. They need a young pass rusher in there. If they don't go pass rusher in the first round, Eli Harold from Virginia could be an option in round 2. But I think they'll go. They signed Jimmy Smith, so they got a top 5 lockdown corner. Maybe Kevin Johnson from Wake Forest if he falls a little bit. I could see them trading up though, but I could definitely also see them trading down. I have no idea what they're going to do. And then the last one was the Patriots, right?
Sorry, before you go on to the Pats, you said something about Landon Collins. It's funny because Sean was actually telling me this the other day. Landon Collins is apparently a huge Redskins fan, and apparently he idolizes Sean Taylor. And so I've heard that apparently he's not a top 5 worthy pick. Ravens would be the next best thing. That's right down the road.
You would think so.
Yeah.
Just like...
Also, he might have... If he grew up loving the Redskins, he might not be a fan of the Ravens.
Hey, but, if you're drafted somewhere...
Right, exactly.
Oh, yeah, exactly. If I was a Major League Baseball player and I got drafted by the Red Sox, I'd still sign my contract instantly.
I think the dollars would influence that.
Yeah.
I would say so.
So on to the Patriots now.
I have them taking Byron Jones, the cornerback from Connecticut. You saw his broad jump, right?
Yeah, that was pretty insane.
I mean, he had the, freakish athletic combine. Brandon Browner's gone. Darrelle Revis is gone. They need a corner.
Yes.
And I think with Bill Belichick's coaching, I think he could be could turn into a great player. But they could trade back. They could trade up. You never know what Bill Belichick's going to do.
Right.
There, a lot of those back picks towards the end of the first round always seem to end up getting traded. Like no matter who it is, it happens a lot. Yeah,
some team wants to trade back into the first for a quarterback or a player they really like. So you never know. This is probably the most unpredictable draft in a few years. I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm going to watch all 7 rounds, and I'm going to love it.
I've also heard that after the top 5 players in this draft, there's not much delineation between a first rounder and a second rounder or a third rounder in this year's draft, which could either mean that this draft is just extremely deep or it's just a lot of mediocre players. Well, what's your take on that?
I don't think there are a lot of mediocre players. I mean, as a Patriots fan, I know as a Ravens fan, like, it really doesn't matter where you draft. If you have the right personnel department, making those selections, I mean, you can get, starter in the 7th round. But
or the greatest quarterback of all time in the 6th round.
I don't think Joe Montana was drafted in the 6th round.
You know who I'm talking about.
But, the point is, it really doesn't matter where you draft. You have an advantage if you're in, the top 10, but, if you have a good scouting department, you can get great players anywhere. There are some positions that are very, very top-heavy, specifically the safety position. I mean, it's Landon Collins, and then there's a safety from Arizona State. His name escapes me right now. But it's pretty much those two, and then, those two will probably go in the first 2 rounds, and then you might not have another safety selected till, round 4. So the safety class is pretty weak. I told Brian about this guy named Jaquiski Tart.
Yes. Future Key and Peele All-Star.
Yes.
Yes.
That guy can hit. I think he's a sleeper. But the safety position, probably more than anything, is very top-heavy. So is the quarterback position. I think it's a top-heavy position at a lot of top-heavy draft at a lot of positions.
Where did he go to school, by the way?
I forget. I just saw the name.
I could totally see in next year, Jaquiski Tart, Iowa State on Key and Peele. I could totally see that.
Aaron
Balake. And don't forget Donkey Teeth.
Donkey Teeth is the best.
And we can't.
He went to Sanford. Jaquiski Tart went to Sanford. I hope I'm not butchering his name.
Stanford?
Samford.
Oh,
Sanford. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a under the radar school right there.
I also saw that the Jets could potentially be trading Muhammad Wilkerson. Do you see that happening for a draft pick or something?
I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jets, between him and Sheldon Richardson, I mean, that's one hell of a combination. Wilkerson might be the best defensive lineman next to J.J. Watt. And that J.J. Watt guy is pretty damn good.
He's okay.
I think you take a major step back if Muhammad Wilkerson isn't on your team. Sheldon Richardson is awesome. But I don't think he's quite at Wilkerson's level yet. But you never know. You never know.
It's funny. I was texting my friends who are Jets fans that didn't give up after the butt fumble, and they were all saying the same thing. They couldn't believe that they would actually think about like trading him. But I've heard that it's Leonard Williams, right, out of USC.
Yes, Leonard Williams.
And I've heard people say he's outstanding, can't miss. If you could trade Wilkerson and get a guy like him, do you think that would be? I mean, if he's a can't miss top 5 player, I mean, wouldn't you want to get him?
Yeah, but I mean, he's still going to take a few years to develop. I think Wilkerson. You have, is Leonard Williams going to be one of the top 2 or 3 defensive linemen in the NFL? I mean, I think
who knows.
Yeah, you never know. You have a proven commodity in Muhammad Wilkerson. He seems to want to stay in New York. So I don't know why you would trade him unless you feel you can upgrade in some way. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
All right, my last question. This isn't necessarily draft related, but when will Roger Goodell come out with the Wells report on Deflategate?
Jesus Christ!
It's 100 days going on now.
I've completely forgotten about that. I haven't even concerned myself with that. I've just completely forgotten about it.
Thank you.
Not on my radar.
Right answer.
To be
right answer.
Covered.
It's not on my radar at all.
Thank you.
So Peaches didn't do anything wrong. All right.
It shouldn't be on your radar. It shouldn't be on anyone else's radar.
The only reason why I still care about it is because I want the NFL to look like absolute fools and assholes for making much ado about nothing.
Let's say this: in 5 years, no one's going to remember this.
Nope.
All right, Brian. Do you have any questions?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you for joining us, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
I'm disappointed, Brian. I wanted you to ask me one specific question, but we didn't.
Oh, right, about Jimmy Smith, right?
Yeah, but it's all right. No worries.
What is
Brian,
the question
ask
about?
the question.
I don't even remember the question. Like, what? It was about Jimmy Smith, but I can't remember what the question was.
How it affects the Ravens' draft plans.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
No worries. No worries.
Yes.
All right. See you, Jeff.
See ya. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Not a problem. Talk to you guys later.
Yeah.
And talk to your boss. Talk to your boss.
Will do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.